Aleph, Bet, Gimel. Do you hear me all right, gentlemen? Can you hear me all right? We are beginning. Good Shabbos to those joining us online. We appreciate your being here. We hope that at some point in the near future you'll come back and join us in person. We'll begin this morning putting the talit on. And there's a specific bracha when we put on the talis. And the last 2-3 words are Asher Kitchanu B'mitzvot V'Tzivanu Lahit Atef, which means literally to envelop oneself. Lahit Atef B'tzitzit. And the tzitzit are on the edges. So I ask a question. How do you envelop yourself with something from a corner? You would expect to envelop yourself with the main component. And the main component, of course, is the whole talis. But that's not the focus of the blessing. The blessing is litatef b'tzitzit, to envelop yourself in the corners. So corners means you've got to reach further out. Maybe this is teaching us, it's called an object lesson. We have to reach out to Jewish people who are on the corners and bring them in. And when we so do, we are enveloping in tzitzit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvot v'tzivanu lahit atef b'tzitzit. On page 99, I hope you have the Siddur at home, and if you don't, and you're interested in having a Siddur at home, please contact me, and we can help that to come to be. We're on page 99, and the first bracha is entitled The Soul. My God, the soul that you've given me is pure. Elohai, neshama shenatata bi tehorahi. You created it. You formed it, you breathed it into me. You watch over it when it is in me. In the future, you will take it from me, but then restore it to me in the world that is coming. As long as the soul is within me, I thank you, Adonai, my God, God of my ancestors, ruler of all creation, master of all souls. Baruch atah Adonai, who restores the soul to the lifeless form. This is the wake-up prayer, you might say. And look at the verbs in the first part. You created it, you formed it, you breathed it, you watch over it. There's a lot of activity associated with God's doing something of the soul for each individual person who walks this planet. A lot of attention given to you created it, you formed it, you breathed it, you watch over it. God's invested in your soul, my soul, your soul, our soul, each one of our souls. You watch over it for my entire life. In the future, someday you will take it from me, but then restore it to me in the world that is coming. That refers to the Jewish tradition of the immortal soul. The world that is coming is the Hebrew term olam haba, which refers to the immortality of the soul. It's not a locational reference. It's not the world in terms of geography or even astrophysics location. We're talking about a view that the essence of an individual will continue after the physical death of the person. The essence of the individual is not limited to the physical constraints that affect the human form. That's what we're talking about. And this is a bracha, which means that it's testifying that this experience that we call life and soulfulness is a blessing. We rise, turning now to pages 103 and 104. Page 103 and 104. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lasech v'bina lahavchin ben yomu ben laila Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'tzalmo. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani ben chorin. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim. Turning to the top of page 104. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kefufim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokah haaretz al hamayim. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei gaver. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa likol tzarki. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael bigvura. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tif ara. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten layoef koach. Unenu yomu chol yom l'chenu chesed rachamim b'nech v'necha ro'enu v'tigmelenu chasadim tovim baruch Adonai kol mei chasadim mo Yisrael. We are seated, turning to page 105. Look at the bottom left corner, page 105, in English reading. Living with life's tensions. We are caught in the tension between our roles as unique beings capable of great accomplishment and the knowledge that we are mortal and their fate is to die and disappear. Prayer helps mediate this tension by impressing on us a sense of thankfulness for the gift of life, the gift of a single day. Prayer helps mediate the tension between our role as unique beings capable of great accomplishment and the knowledge that we are mortal and that our fate is to die and disappear. On the one hand, and on the other hand. On the one hand, each one of us is a masterwork of God's own touch. On the other hand, we are limited and we are finite. So how do we address that tension? And remember, the Hebrew word tefillah, prayer, means, in essence, to judge the self, to go inside, to seek, in order to learn how to go out into the world. On page 112, the Psalm for Shabbat. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, lahagid baboker chasdecha, ve'emunatcha balelot, alei asor v'alei navel, alei higayon bechinor, Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, toldot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ki simach Adonai b'folecha, b'maaseh yodecha aranein, ma'agalo ma'asech Adonai ma'od, amku machshavotecha, Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, toldot l'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon. The arrogant do not understand, the fool does not comprehend this. The wicked flourish like grass, and every evildoer blossoms only to be destroyed forever. But you, Adonai, are exalted for all time. Surely your enemies, Adonai, surely your enemies will perish. All who commit evil will be scattered. As a wild bull raises up its horn, you raise my head high, anointed it with fresh oil. As my enemies gather against me, my gaze remains steady, for my ears listen and hear. The righteous flourish like the date palm, thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Adonai, they flourish in our God's courtyards. In old age, they remain fruitful, still fresh and bountiful, proclaiming, Adonai is upright, my rock, in whom there is no flaw. Baruch Shamar on page 122. Page 122. The first two words call out to me today. Baruch Sha'amar. Blessed is the one who spoke, the Hayah Ha'olam, and the universe came into being. And you might ask, to what does this refer? And I'm going to ask you, think about it. In our mindset as Jews, when we hear the term, blessed is the one who spoke, and the universe came into being, we should go somewhere in our heads. In Torah, we should go somewhere. Blessed is the one who spoke, and the universe came into being. That's the very first experience of Breshit, of Genesis, of creation. We do ourselves a disservice when we follow too much English translations and presentations. God said, Yehi or, not let there be light. There will be light. There's a difference. There will be light. It's direct, it's confident. Speech transforming the experience. You and I are the only ones in the entire animal kingdom who have the gift of speech. When our words go out from our mouths into the world, what will we create? Will we create a local experience, interaction between ourselves and other people, a world, an interaction of hostility, cruelty, barb, invective, judgmentalism, or will we create a world of interaction, of speech, of patience, calm, gentle speech, responsiveness, reassurance, words of hope? It's right here. Baruch Shamar v'haya ha'olam, Baruch Hu, Baruch Oseh v'Reshit, Baruch Omer v'Oseh, Baruch Gozer u'Mekayim, Baruch Merachem al haaretz, Baruch Merachem al habriot, Baruch Meshalem Sachar Tov Lireov, Baruch Chalad V'Kayom Lo Netzach, Baruch Podeh Umatzil, Baruch Shemo. The singular one who gives life to the world, the sovereign who is praised and glorified forever and ever. This is your great name. Baruch atah Adonai, sovereign, celebrated with songs of praise. Yachid Cheho Olamim, Melech Mishubach Mufawar, Adei Ad Shemo Hagadol, Baruch atah Adonai, Melech Mulobati Shpachot. Page 130. Moment of silence, considering this psalm or a commentary on this psalm on page 130. This is an ancient poem. Poetry is supposed to reach out and touch you in a way that prose doesn't. Halfway down. You've made the one on high your refuge. That's talking to us and asserting from the poet's perspective that we have already declared a relationship with God. So in this poem, as a result of having declared a personal relationship with God, guess what? Evil shall not befall you, nor plague approach your tent, for God will instruct angels to guard you wherever you go. Imagine, God's going to instruct angels to follow each and every one of us, all around us. When we're driving down the street, on the highway, going to the bank, post office, walking out and about, God's going to instruct angels to guard each and every one of us, and they will carry you in the palms of their hands, lest your foot strike a stone. They're going to lift you up and prevent you from stumbling on the path. Literally, oh, I don't want to stub my toe, an angel's going to pick me up and protect me. When are they going to do that? It's a poem.
So we're not to take it literally.
It's a poem. So it's not a warranty. It's not a guarantee. It's a religious poem. So I believe that it's here. I think it's here to put us into a mindset of looking at our lives differently, hopefully. Looking at our lives differently. That because we have declared inside our own minds a personal relationship with God, that God has the capacity to have a sense of gentle, powerful guardianship upon each and every one of us. It's a poem.
Along with the poem goes poetic justice.
It's a poem. Near the bottom, when you call upon me, I shall answer you. I shall be with you in times of trouble. I shall strengthen you and honor you. I shall satisfy you with the fullness of days and show you my deliverance. I shall satisfy you with the fullness of days and show you my deliverance. The Ashrei on page 136. Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha Od Yalucha Salam Ashreham shekochalo, Ashreham sharonoi Elohav, Tehillah leDavid, Aramim cholahai hamelech, Vavracha shimcha leolam vaed, Bechol yom avarcheka, Va'ahalala shimcha leolam vaed, Gadol Adonai malol ma'od, V'lig dulato ein cheker, Dor yishabach masecha, Ugvoratecha yagidu, Hadar kavod hodecha, V'divrei niflotecha asicha, Ve'ezuz noratecha yomeru, Ugdulatecha asapreno, Zecharav tuvacha yaviu, V'tzid katecha yiranenu, Chanun rachum Adonai, Erech apayim ugdol chassid, Tov Adonai lakol, Rachamov al kol ma'asov, Yoduch Adonai kol ma'asecha, V'chasidecha yivrachucha, Kvod malchutcha yomeru, Ugvoratecha yedaberu, Lodia livnei hadam gvurotav, Ukvod hadar malchuto, Malchutecha malchut kol olamim, Umemshaltecha b'chodor vador, Somech Adonai l'chol hanoflim, V'zokef l'chol hakfufim, Einei chol elecha yesaberu, V'ata noten lehem et achlam b'ito, Poteach et yodecha, Umaspia l'chol charatzon, Tzadik Adonai b'chol dirachov, V'chasid b'chol ma'asav, Karov Adonai l'chol korov, L'chol asher yikrohu v'emet, Ritzon re'av ya'aseh, V'yet shavotam yishma v'yoshiem, Shomer Adonai et kol ohavov, V'yet kol harashaim yashmid, Tehillat Adonai daber pi, V'vorech kabasar, Shem gachal yalam voed. V'anachnu nevarech Yah me'ata v'ad olam. Hallelujah. Turning now to the top of page 141, please. Hallelujah, El B'Kodsho, Hallelujah, Birki Ozo, Hallelujah, Vigvurotav, Hallelujah, Kerov Gulo, Hallelujah, B'Teka Shofar, Hallelujah, B'Nevel B'Chinor, Hallelujah, B'Tofu Machol, Hallelujah, B'Mini Bugav, Hallelujah, Hallelujah, V'tzil tzalei shamam. Hallelujah, Hallelujah, V'tzil tzalei trua. Kol anshama tehalel Yah. Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Kol anshama tehalel Yah. Hallelujah, Hallelujah. The top of page 148. Yishtabach Shimcha Lo Ad Malkeinu Ha'el HaMelech Hagadol v'Hakadosh B'Shamayim u'Ba'aretz Ki Lecha Noeh Adonai Eloheinu V'Elohei Avotenu V'Imotenu Shir u'Shvacha Halel v'Zimra Ozu Memshala Netzach Gedula Ugvura Tehillah v'tiferet, Kedusha u'malchut, Brachot v'orot, me'ata v'ad olam, Baruch atah Adonai, El melech gadol v'tishbachot, El hodot, Adonai niflot, Habocher b'shirei zimra, Melech elchei olamim. Please rise. And the reason we rise is because of page 149, which is in front of page 150. If you look at page 149, we have two lines. We have the Baruch Hu. The Baruch Hu consists of two lines. The person who's leading the service, if there's a minyan, says Baruch Hu, and the people within the community say Baruch, and the leader says Baruch again. And those two lines, which are called the Baruch Hu, introduce the top of page 150, which is a bracha, a single blessing. It's because of the blessing on page 150 that we have the Baruch Hu on 149. It's because of the blessing on 150, which we say we need a minyan to stand together. What is it about 150? Look at the top of the page 150. We don't have a minyan in the house, so we're not doing the Baruch Hu, so we're on page 150 at the top. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam yotzer or uvarei choshech oseh shalom uvarei et hakol. Baruch atah Adonai, our God, sovereign of time and space, forming light and creating darkness, bringing harmony while creating all. We stand up. In fact, we invent the Baruch Hu. We insert the Baruch Hu on the prior page, so we are paying attention to the top of 150, the blessing we just read aloud and chanted in Hebrew, that God creates time and space, light and dark, and hopefully peace in everything. That's why we stand up, because that's how we have to begin our day. We can't begin our day without the essential expression that light, dark, day, night, reality, and shalom must all be simultaneous. And the prayer book presents this in order for us to be prepared for the Shema. So now we're seated. Page 151. Hiladon al kol ha'ma'asim baruch b'fi kol neshama gadlo v'tuva malei olam da'atu tvuna sovavim moto hamit gael chayot hakodesh v'nera b'chavod al merkava zachot mishor lifnei chiso chesed v'rachamim lifnei chavodo tovim ma'orot shebara Elohim Nu Yitzaram B'dat B'vina Uvaskeam Koach Ugvura Natan Bahem Liot Moshnim B'kerev Tevel Moleim Zevum Fikim Nogah Noezevum B'chololam Semechim B'tzeitam V'sasim B'voam Osim B'yema Ritzon Konam Pe'er V'chavod Notnim Lishmo Tzahalavarina Lezechem Alchuto Kara Lashem Vayizrach ora v'hitkin tzurat halvana shevak nonim lo kol zavam aram tiveretu gedula srafim yovanim v'chayot hakodesh yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 yada da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 And now on page 153, the very last line, pardon me, the very last line, page 153. Or Chadash al Tzion Ta'ir, 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 V'nizka cholanu mehera leora, V'nizka cholanu mehera leora, Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer Hamorot. The first paragraph at the top of page 154. You have loved us deeply, Adonai our God, and showered us with boundless compassion, Avinu Malkeinu, for the sake of our ancestors who trusted in you, and to whom you taught the laws of life. So may you be gracious to us and instruct us. Kind Creator, have compassion for us. Open our hearts so that we may understand, and with love discern, hear and study, observe, perform, and fulfill all the teachings of your Torah with love. Enlighten our eyes with your Torah, attach our hearts to your mitzvot, unify our hearts to love and revere your name so that we never lose hope. As we trust in your great, holy, awe-inspiring name, we will delight and rejoice in your deliverance. And now we take hold of the corners of the talit. It's rectangular, obviously 4 corners. And look at the symbolism here within the first phrase of the second stanza. Bring us safely from the 4 corners of the earth and lead us in dignity to our land. What do we need? We need a home. We need a community, a sense of togetherness, and we deserve a sense of dignity. And that's what is supposed to be front and center in our heads as we hold these 4 corners, the tzitziot, in preparation of the Shema. That we belong to something grander than ourselves. We're not isolated. We're not alone. We're part of something, and the something cares about us. The something is all the Jewish people throughout all time, across the entire world, held together by a core belief, the belief in a creator that is involved in reality. Baruch atah Adonai, who lovingly cares for the people of Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher b'amo Yisrael b'yahava. Shema on page 155. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam B'shivtecha b'beitecha, u'v'lechtecha v'aderech, u'v'shachbecha v'kumecha, u'kishartam la'ot al yadecha, v'hayu letotafot b'neinecha, u'tavtam al mezuzot beitecha, u'v'sharecha. the middle of 156. Vayomer Adonai el Moshe lemor taber el bnei Yisrael v'marta lehem v'asu lahem tzitzit al kanfei vigdehem ledorotam v'natnu al tzitzit HaKanaf Petil Techelet Vayalachem Letzitzit Uritamoto Uschartem Et Kol Mitzvot Adonai Vasitem Otam Velotatum Acharei Levavchem V'charei Enechem Asher Atem Zonim Acharehem Laman Tizkaru Vasitem Et Kol Mitzvotai Vitem Kirushim Lelechem Ani Anelechem Asher Utzeti Etchem Eretz Mitzrayim Liot Lachem Lelohim Ani Eloi Elohechem Adonai Elohechem Emet. On the lower half of page 157 on the English side. You are always the help of our ancestors, a shield and deliverer for their descendants in every generation. You abide at the pinnacle of the universe. Your judgment and your righteousness extend to the ends of the earth. Blessed are the ones who attend to your mitzvot and place your teaching and words on their hearts. Truly, you are the ruler of your people, a mighty sovereign who takes up their cause. Truly, you are at the beginning and you will be at the end. Aside from you, we have no ruler who can redeem and deliver. The middle of page 158. Mi chamocha poelim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh naratilot osef eleh shira chadasha shibchu geulim l'shimcha sefat hayam yachad kulam hotuvim lichuv yamro Adonai Yimloch L'olam Voed Tzur Yisrael Koma Be'ezrat Yisrael Ovedech Inumecha Yehuda B'Yisrael Go Aleinu Adonai Tzvot Shemo Kedosh Yisrael. We rise, turning to page 159, and you see here the title of the page on 159. It's the Shabbat morning Amida. We have an Amida every single day of the year. And on page 159, just a little reminder, the way that we begin our most shared and direct and directed and intimate prayer with God is by opening with words, remembering our ancestors. We're on page 159 in the prayer book. In the prayer book. And the opening bracha on 159 speaks of the ancestors. Page 159, that's the avot v'imahot. And then as you turn to page, allow me just one moment, please. 160, the second blessing speaks of God as having great power. It's translated here as God's saving care. I don't really like that translation because the Hebrew is gevurot, and gevurot means powers. When you and I hear powers, we might think of people working out in a gym and lifting magnificent weights and so on. Or if you're thinking about comic book, Superman flies through the air, powers. Page 160, the powers of God. You sustain the living. You give life to the dead, which refers to the immortality of the soul. You support those who fall down. You heal the sick. And you loosen the chains of the bound. you bring caring and reassurance and hope into people's lives, wherever we might be, however we are within our own experiences. Those are the powers of God, not being more powerful than a locomotive. That's 160. And those are the first two brachot that we'll chant aloud. Thereafter, a few moments of silent prayer. The traditional text concludes on page 166, and there are many prayers here that people might consider in their own silent reflection, beginning aloud on pages 159 and 160. And for those at home who are following along and looking for the transliteration, the very last page of the prayer book, literally 466, the very last page, is the transliteration of what we'll be chanting right now, 159 and 160. I don't know why it's so high. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Anora El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'Konei HaKol Zocher chastei avot v'imahot, u'mevig goel livnei v'neihem, l'man shemo b'ahava, melech ozer u'foked u'moshiach u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham u'foked Sarah, atah gibor le'olam Adonai, mechayei metim atah rav lahoshia, mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, mechalkel chayim b'chesed, mechayei metim berachamim rabim, somech noflim v'rofei cholim, o matir asurim, o mekayim emunato lishenei afar, mi chamocha ba'al gevurot, o midam melach, melech meimit, o mechayeh, o matzmiach Yeshua, v'ne'eman atalach hayod metim, Baruch atah Adonai, mechayeh hametim. A quick survey, just a reminder, because sometimes we're a little out of practice. Holding 159 through 165, and I want to show you the titles of the brachot, just to have in the framework of what do Jews talk about on Friday night and Saturday morning in the prayer book, in the Amida, which is the direct phone call to God. 159, we open our prayer by reminding ourselves that we are connected to God through our ancestors. Our ancestors are our first stepping stone to being connected to God. Where do we learn about Jewish tradition? Where do we learn about the importance of having a synagogue? From our ancestors, our immediate ancestors. The opening bracha speaks of Abram, Isaac, and Jacob, but in my mind, I think about my grandparents and my great-grandparents. Of course, I didn't know my great-grandparents, but I think about the lineage between Abraham and Sarah all the way down to our own immediate families. That's the first blessing. Second blessing, God's great power of care. Third, on 161, the bracha speaks of God's holiness in the world. Fourth bracha on page 162. And this is where Judaism is unique, because Judaism teaches that Shabbos itself is holy time. So we have ancestors, God's caring power, the holiness of God, the holiness of Shabbos. Look at page 163. The fifth bracha, restoration of Zion, the holiness of the land of Israel. That's what this bracha is talking about. And we say the Amida, Friday night, Shabbos morning, and Shabbos afternoon, and we have the same themes recurring. And here on page 164, this is the thank you blessing. Holiness of God, holiness of Shabbat, holiness of Israel. And by the way, it's important to say thank you. And officially, the Amida ends on page 165, Sim Shalom, with a prayer for peace. That's the Amida. But look at page 166. You see two little stanzas here. Officially, these paragraphs are not part of the Amida. The first one has been around for 1,500 years or more. It's called El Hai Nitzor. It's very famous. There was a rabbi. His name was Ravina. Ravina had a son. We don't know his name. We don't know the name of Ravina's son. We call him the man. His name got lost 1,600 years ago. The man, who was the son of this rabbi named Ravina, wrote a prayer, his own personal prayer. He began to recite it after the Amida every day. People liked it. They copied it. And that's this paragraph, which has been recited at the end of every Amida every single day for the past 1,600 years. They liked a prayer that somebody whose name they no longer knew wrote down, they copied it, and they attached it, and it became kind of part of the Amida, but officially it's not, because officially the Amida ends with a prayer for shalom, for peace. I've always been intrigued by this, to like a prayer so much written by a stranger, but to feel that it says something for you yourself. And that's why this is in the Siddur. And then here, following along with that, the editors of this modern prayer book, which came out maybe 6 years ago, found another prayer written by a famous rabbi. His name is Nachman of Bratslav. He lived in the Ukraine 150 years ago or so. And somebody had the idea of, let's add another prayer written by somebody else. And so that's why we have a second paragraph here on the bottom of 166. And the point I'm trying to make is, we're to hold on to the prayers that have been handed down for millennia or centuries or decades. But we're also to compose our own prayers. And if you and I are not able in our own eyes to compose our own prayers, let's listen to somebody else. And maybe somebody else's words, maybe her words or his words, will inspire us, and take hold of those words and incorporate them into our own prayer.
I can't believe they didn't, that his name did not follow.
His name didn't follow. He's called Mar, which means the man.
But the fact that they know who his father was.
They know his father, yeah. So in effect, we could say that Dad must have been so proud his son got published.
Yeah.
But I don't know if Ravina, the father, was alive when his son wrote this prayer. I have no idea. So who knows if the father named Ravina ever knew that his son wrote this prayer, which has ever since become famous. Who knows? We're on page 168. Ein kamocha v'Elohim Adonai v'ein k'ma'asecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha b'chol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Adonai Oz lamo yitein Adonai yevarech et amova shalom avarachamim heitiva virtzoncho et Zion Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim Kivecha levad botachnu Melech Elram v'nisa Adon olamim. Vayehi bin so Aharon Vayomer Moshe Kom Adonai Ve'afutzu oyevecha Ve'anusu misanecha Mipanecha Ki mitzion Teitzei Torah Ki mitzion Teitzei Torah Udavar Adonai Mirushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah La'amo Yisrael B'kedu Shato. The top of page 169. Compassionate Creator, teach me to appreciate the love of my family and friends. May I not be the source of pain or contention, jealousy, or needless competitiveness, but may I learn to listen to the heartfelt stirrings of all whom I know and love, and may I help fulfill their needs. Grant health of body and spirit to all. May your Torah fashion me into an instrument of your will and of your peace. Amen. The bottom of 170. Be'on arachetz V'lishmei kadisha yakira Anna emar tushbechan Be'on arachetz V'lishmei kadisha yakira Anna emar tushbechan Yehera avokadomoch de tiftach libi bioraita vitashli mishalin delibi veliba dechol amoch Yisrael letavo lechayin velishlam Amen. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo.
Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonai, Kadosh Shemo.
Gadol Adonai Tin Rama Shmo Yaakov. L'cha Adonai hagedula v'hagevura v'tiferet v'hanetzach v'hahod kicho b'shamayim u'va'aretz kicho b'shamayim u'va'aretz Adonai hamamlocha v'minaseh l'chol rosh Romemo Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu L'Hadam Raglav Kodoshu Romemo Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu Le'har Kodsho Ki Kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. We are seated. We're going to study a little Parsha today. And the Parsha is found here in the Chumash, page 523. If you have a Chumash at home, if not, contact me and we'll try to make that happen. Because if you're following it at home, you need to be following along with the Torah reading. And the Chumash is known as the Eitz Chaim. Chumash is the Hebrew word. Chumash is a noun. It comes from the Hebrew number Chamesh, which is the number 5. The official name of this book is the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, the 5 fives of the Torah, or the 5 fifths of the Torah. You could say 5 volumes, but in Hebrew, sounds convey a message. The same way that the word Sidur should wake up your ears and say, oh, I know a Sidur. That sounds like the Seder on Passover. Sidur and Seder. Sidur comes from Seder. What does Seder mean? Order. So Sidur is the prayer book because all the prayers are in a very specific and intentional order. Chamesh, the number 5. Chamisha, Chumshei, Torah, the 5 fives that make up the Torah. So the Torah wording in book form is called the Chumash. The Torah wording in Torah is called a Torah. Exactly right. You knew that. You knew this. You know this. You know this. Exactly right. But officially, the Torah is also a what? It's a Megillah. Because what's a Megillah? Scroll. It's got the wood. Now you could put the Eitz Chaim. So the nickname for the handle, one handle is Eitz Chaim, the other handle is Eitz Chaim. Plural is Atzei Chaim. Eitz Chaim means tree of life. So officially we have 2 trees of life on the Torah. These are called the Atzei Chaim. And that's just the nickname.
So the Torah is without the wood?
You could have a Torah without Atzei Chaim, without the trees, without the handles. You could. It'd be... it'd be hard to roll
Yeah.
mechanically or manipulatively. It'd be difficult to roll the scroll without the handles.
Especially as it got smaller and smaller, it'd be easier to bend.
Exact.
The
So
other side would be probably okay.
exact. So I don't. I mean, I don't know. I obviously have not seen every Torah in the entire world, so I don't know. But I mean, potentially. But if you've ever seen Sephardic Torahs, they're in a container, and they don't look like Ashkenazic Torah. We have one here, which I occasionally show people. Here it is. So this is a replica of a Sephardic Torah. It's a Mizrahi and Eastern Torah. And if you go to a Sephardic synagogue, you'll see this, and it's a container. It's a container, and it's often decorated. And sometimes you'll have little pretty cloths or silks or so on hanging down on the outside or maybe on the inside. And so that's the Torah. And so there, now this is decoration, but there is something like a handle built into the container somewhere. I've never been up close to when they've been rolling a Torah, so I don't know exactly, but there's a handle somewhere. But if you go to a Sephardic shul and they take the Torah out, the Torah table is flat, because the container has to stand up. And the container is, 2-3 feet high, 4 feet high. So the parchment is the same, the wording is the same, but it's housed within a large container, which is, again, yay big, approximately. And when you take it out of the Torah, out of the ark, you hold it this way because it's round, you might say. And for Hagba, they do this, and they hold it up this way. But again, you've got to be really strong because it's heavy, and it's got the weight of the container. I don't know what else to call it. It's a container. A case. It's a case. It's a Torah case.
But it's got wooden dowels.
I don't know. I haven't been up. I mean, I've been close to a Sephardic Torah, but I haven't been that close to go up. On a Shabbos morning, you don't go up and say, can I, you're looking at the parchment, you're looking at the wording if you're having an aliyah, or if you're nearby, you're this close and you can see it. So, but typically the Torah reader is at the table, and it's yay high, and he has a yad, and he's reading this way, vertically, because it's standing up. A Sephardic Torah stands up, and then when it gets time to, somehow there's I don't know where the roller is, inside, top, I don't know, but rolls it, and then goes on, and then he reads this way. And then and they have 7 aliyahs, because it's Shabbos, and then when they finish, they lift it way up, and that's Hagba, and they close it. So they don't really have Galila the way you and I do. We have Galila, which means dressing, and we put the belt on, and then the outer cover, and if we have the crown, we put the crown on top, so obviously they don't have a crown. So, but that's artistic feature. So what matters is not the artistic feature or the decor, for lack of a better term, but what matters is the parchment and the wording and the content. So obviously at a certain point in time, 1,000, 800, 600 years ago, approximately, something like that, these differing artistic or stylistic features began to arise within Ashkenazic and Sephardic communities. So if you wanted to, you could say, let's focus on the differences in the outward appearances, which are only superficial, Or you could say, let's focus on the main message, which is that for thousands of years, we've been reading scroll in a community setting, a community center, a community synagogue. And at some point, after hundreds of years, Mediterranean Sephardic communities began to decorate the Torah scrolls in one way, and Eastern European Torahs began to be decorated or constructed artistically in a slightly different way, only on the outside. The inner working is still the same, it's identical. So that's what matters. Yes, sir.
Is the Sephardic way any better than the Ashkenazic way? Does God appeal to, I mean, is there a difference, or should we quit getting disgusted with the other groups? God appeals to everyone, but...
So I have no way of answering that question. I would deeply believe that any community that is reading Torah and praying together would be finding favor in God's eyes if we choose to hold on to that mindset that there's such a thing as finding favor in the eyes of God.
Is Joseph Carroll any better than the Ramak when they split? Or they do things differently?
So I'm going to use a metaphor that I don't personally use, but maybe it'll work as the words come out of my mouth. Okay? I imagine that if you're in New Orleans, you're going to make gumbo in one way, but if you're in a different part of Cajun country, you might make gumbo in a different way. How's that? Never had gumbo, I never will have gumbo, right?
There's gonna be different gumbos.
There are going to be different recipes.
Any two that are alike.
Exactly. But it's still going to be called gumbo, right? So here's the traditional rabbi who keeps kosher, who wants to teach his people to keep kosher, using gumbo as a metaphor for how you got Ashkenazic and Sephardic traditions.
It's vegetarian, it's
Okay.
vegan.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go that way. Okay, so there's Chicago-style pizza and there's New York-style pizza. Thank you. Better, more apt, appropriate metaphor. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Doctor. Thank you. So y'all get the drift. And by the way, that just shows how much I've either improved or changed. I don't know if improved, because 30 years ago, I would not have used that metaphor, would I? So living in Mobile has seasoned me. How's that for a pun intended? Okay, here we go. We're on page 523. Kitisa Rosh B'nai Yisrael Livkudeyem V'nanu Ish Kofer. We have 5 Torah readings in sequence. 2 weeks ago, last week, today, next week, and the following week. 5 Torah readings out of 54. That's obviously, 9%, you might say, right? 5 Torah readings given to one specific element in our lives, not the 10 Commandments. 5 Torah readings, 2.5 given to the design phase, and approximately 2.5, give or take, or 2 given to the construction phase of a portable room. And the room was going to be part of our lives for about 300 years. And we nickname it 2 things, either the Mishkan, the tabernacle, or the Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting. But 5 excerpts, the last 2, the next 2, fully detailed to the construction of the room and part of today's. 5 passages given to, it's like reading a blueprint. It's as exciting as reading a blueprint. It's reading a blueprint. That's what we're dealing with. But 5 Torah readings given to a blueprint so that people who had just left slavery were going to have an opportunity to see themselves as connecting to the creator of the universe. And this Mishkan, this Ohel Moed, this tabernacle, this tent of meeting, was and did remain for 300 years, give or take, the single access point for the community to come together to feel that it was in the presence of God, and more, that God was in the presence of the people. That's what's going on here. So while it is not perhaps as super exciting as a novel, when you and I read it, we need to look behind it and ask ourselves, what does it mean for individuals, and each person is very different, to be willing and able to come together to share her or his own artistic abilities and resources and donations to build something for their own generation and the next 8, 9, 10 generations. That's what we should be thinking about. Side note, the Mishkan operates for 300-ish years. Our shul is 126, 7, 8 years old as a community. What is that, 4 or 5 generations within our synagogue? So just imagine, our ancestors built the first structure, which was a house, and then the first shul, and then the second shul, and then the third shul, which is where we are, and that's over a span of 4 generations, 4 or 5 generations, give or take. And we're now reading a testimony of a building, an edifice, which is portable, that's going to operate for 10 or so generations. Yes?
Did I know we discussed this on the agenda, did the Torah go through the split sea, or was it created after the split sea?
I don't think the Torah was around at the time of Moses. I believe that the Big Ten were there, and other oral and written materials. And I think that over a span of time after Moses, the Big Ten and other written material and other oral material was eventually combined and came into written form, and that became the Torah. And I can't give you an exact timeline. And by the way, this is often the subject of discussion between rabbis and historians and academics and researchers and philosophers as to what was the timeline and when did the Torah come into its final form. And I'm not going to get into even a summary of all the different points of view, because it will take too long, and pardon me, you won't really be interested. Maybe you are, but we'll have lunch and 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 beers, and then we'll make it easier, but not doing it right now, okay? So we're on page 523. And because we're building a structure, people need to make a contribution. And that's what this is talking about. This is like your endowment fund pledge, but it's fairly affordable. So look at page 524. This is what everyone who is entered into the record shall pay. Everybody. So there is uniformity and consistency. Everybody shall pay a half shekel by a sanctuary weight, 20 gerahs, it's a small unit, a half shekel as an offering to the Lord. So every person's going to bring in a half shekel. Verse 14, everyone who is entered in the records, that means counted in the community, from the age of 20 years up shall give to the Lord's offering. So the rich shall not pay more, and the poor shall not pay less than half a shekel. So this is a question, and I went looking and I couldn't quite find what I was looking for. which means that either I didn't look in the right places, or maybe I'm not looking for something in the right way. The phrase here is, the rich shall not give more than half shekel, and the poor shall not give less than half a shekel, which means everybody's going to give the same amount of money to maintain the tabernacle, which is beautiful. We're talking about equity and parity and consistency and fairness, that nobody be perceived as being out of step with anyone else, to maintain a worship center. I think that's just a glorious piece, a glorious idea. The foundation is we're all paying the same. Here's my question. When they came out of Egypt, they were ex-slaves. So would there have been richer ex-slaves and poorer ex-slaves? I don't think so. I mean, I can't really imagine that some ex-slaves had 2 camels and some ex-slaves had 6 camels. My brain can't process that. Now, like I said, maybe I don't know the right places to look because I've been looking in some of my books and I haven't found anything yet. So therefore, I go in a new direction. And I wonder, and this is a question of my own making, that perhaps this phrase is not talking about the generation of Moses and the slaves. Perhaps this phrase is directed to some generations later on in Israelite history, when the tabernacle may be in need of updating and maintenance. And I think that makes sense, that as generations have passed and people are now settled in the promised land and people are working, and some people tend to accumulate wealth and some people don't, and some people are more wealthy than others, and we understand that that's kind of part of how society and history operates. So that's how I am treating this sentence. While it's being described as happening at the time of Moses, I think it might be reflecting a time period later. But I may be wrong. But however, whether I'm wrong or not, which is entirely possible, I'm still struck by the fact that the Torah's stipulation for maintaining a house of community gathering and worship is to be one of equality and equity for all people. And side note, in the Torah readings last week and 2 weeks ago, and in next week and the following week, we have descriptions of men and women working side by side. This phrase is probably directed towards males, but it could be interpreted as being directed towards males and females. And I don't want to get too much more into the grammar because that's really getting into the weeds. But
I think that the board went and visited the richer ones and later and said, okay, you paid your dues, now give us a donation.
maybe that could also be the case. Could be. So now here we are, we're on page 524. We need to jump a little bit. Verse 17, the Lord spoke to Moses saying, make a laver of copper and a stand of copper for it. They had no running water. Things got dirty, so they needed a basin of water. So you don't just go to Walmart and buy a plastic basin of water. That would be dinky looking. So you have to make a really nice basin, very pretty. And guess what? Who's going to start putting the water into and taking the water out of the basin? The Levi. Exactly. So thanks for being here, because when I need some water filled up, I'm going to call you to fill up the water, okay?
Is that why the ceremony of the lady washed the hands of the coin?
Might be.
So get a basin person.
Yeah, but I'm not a Cohen, but maybe. So there we go. All right, fine. Verse 20, when they, that's going to be Aaron and his sons. Verse 20, when Aaron and his sons enter the tent of meeting, they shall wash with water that they may not die. That means you have to be focused of your mind and of your spirit. If you're not focused of your mind and say, hey, I'm taking this really seriously, zapparoonie. So,
That was a blessing for washing the hands.
It's a good question. Perhaps.
Is it a true mitzvah? It's one of the 613 that you have to wash your hands?
You're supposed to wash your hands before you say the hamotzi, yes. I mean, so I don't know if it's one of the 613. I'd have to look that up, but you're supposed to wash your hands before you say the hamotzi. So nowadays, most days, not always, most days, when I say a hamotzi, I wash my hands. Some days it's a little challenging. I mean, if I'm traveling on the road, there depends on where I am. So if I'm in an airport and I brought a sandwich with me in between flights, so I have two choices. I can go into the bathroom and wash my hands, but you don't say a blessing inside the bathroom. So I wash my hands and I walk out, say the blessing, and then I go to my seat and I eat my sandwich. Or I have washed my hands at the water fountain, but neither one is really comfortable because, it's kind of hard with now boarding flight 614 right in the background, and it's kind of hard, but I have done that. So, and sometimes I don't. Sometimes I just say the hamotzi, especially if I'm already on the flight. I don't really like washing my hands for netilat yadayim inside the airplane's bathroom. It's just not really the appropriate atmosphere of washing my hands. When I wash hands, and we say, Asher kitchanu b'mitzvotah v'tzivanu al netilat yadayim, pour water, dry your hands, and you say, Hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and you eat your sandwich. What I'm really doing is, I'm saying that my hands are holding a gift from God. My hands are holding sustenance and nutrition, energy, life, and strength. So I don't just say hamotzi by myself. I want to prepare my hands are holding something. So might be P&J, might be grilled cheese, might be tuna melt, but I'm holding something. So I say this netilat yadayim, and I concentrate on I'm eating, and then I say hamotzi, and I eat my sandwich. In a pinch, hand sanitizer might, but to be honest, okay, now we're getting into halakha and Talmud and codes of law, which are developed way past the days of the Torah. You need a certain quantity of liquid to wet your hands, which represents that you have done the hand washing properly. And one squirt doesn't cover your hands wet enough. You're supposed to use 2 or 3 cups of water when you do your hands, which means the more I think about it, the more it might be reflective of the Kohanim washing their hands, which is from here. It might be reflective. So now I have to figure out where to go in which books to see if I can figure out if I'm up the right, barking up the wrong tree or the right tree. See, that's the stuff. Rabbis love doing this stuff. Which book is it going to be in? You're not sure. Go look for another book. And
Yeah.
20 volumes. And see, things are not always indexed the way you and I think they would be. That's the problem when you have to go looking for something. I'm talking way too much. Okay, folks, we're moving on. So, where do I want to go? One second. I wanted to look for something. Okay, so now look at page 525, verse number 22 and following. Moses invented the first compounding pharmacy. That's a joke. Okay, anyway. So take all these spices, a 500 weight of myrrh. You know what myrrh is? The Hebrew word is mor, mem resh. And when the Torah was being translated into Greek and then Latin and then German, and then French, and then English. People did not know what more was, and they wrote it in European languages, which then became myrrh. So myrrh doesn't translate what more is. Myrrh is just more written in a European language. It's a spice. So take all these spices, myrrh and cinnamon and cassia and olive oil, and make this compound. And when you're dedicating the sanctuary, you dedicate the sanctuary with a little bit of a little dabbleduya, both on the sanctuary, I'm showing my age, and a little dabbledu, and on Moses, and on, not on Moses, Moses does it, but on Aaron and his sons, and all the future Kohanim, and so on. And it's called a compound. And if you look at page 526, we're going to jump in just a minute, we'll finish. 526, verse number 25. Vasita oto shemen mishchat kodesh rokach mirkachat rokeach. Rokach mirkachat rokeach. Rokach or rokeach means mixture. When I was a kid growing up in Connecticut, I'd go grocery shopping with my mom, and we went to the small store that had a lot of kosher goods. It was the kosher grocery store. And Mom used to buy Rokich foods, canned soups and so on. And I always call them Rokich. I didn't know it was pronounced Rokeach. Have you ever seen the Rokeach label?
Yeah.
It's a Hebrew word. It's a Jewish company, soups and other things. It comes from this word, Rokeach, which means a mixture. So Mom used to buy canned soups named Rokeach. Later I learned, Rokeach. So whoever invented the company Rokeach knew that Rokeach is a Hebrew word that means mixture. Kind of funny. Okay, fine. That's it. Anyway. So, and now we're going to jump to the Haftorah, because we're going to jump to the Haftorah and we'll be finished for just a minute. We'll conclude the service. We're on page 1288 in the Chumash, page 1288. Yes, in the Chumash, page 1288. 1288 for a Haftorah. We're now in a certain cycle of time. We've finished the holiday of Purim, and we're approaching the holiday of Pesach. And at this point in our calendar, we have a slight shift in terms of the Haftorahs, the prophetic passages that are read from the book of Nevi'im, from the book of prophets inside the Hebrew Bible. Most of the time, a Haftorah from the prophets in some way echoes a theme or an idea in the Torah reading, but not always, especially when calendarical events come along and things get changed. We are now approaching Passover. And so the mindset of our ancestors 2,400, 2,300 years ago is, we have to get ready for Pesach. How do you get ready for Pesach? Well, if you can go to the grocery store and buy Rokeach products, then you're okay, you're good. But you've got to do a few things. And this is one of the elements here. So I'm just looking at a few phrases, and we'll consider the Haftorah as being read. We're on page 1288, verse number 24. Ezekiel is talking to the people of Israel during and after the destruction of the first temple. We talk about with Tisha B'Av. He's talking to the people, and in effect, he's saying, boy, we've had some terrible experiences. Our lives are broken. We feel distanced from God. We are not living in our land. We are not free people. We are suffering. We're living outside of our land because we were taken as slaves to Babylonia, now Iran and Iraq. We are at the lowest ebb we can possibly even imagine. And he says, but don't worry, the future is going to get better. And the sentences that I wish to look at for just a moment, verse 24. I will take you from among the nations and gather you from all the countries, and I'll bring you back to your own land. I'm going to bring you home. This is Ezekiel as a prophet speaking on behalf of God. You are going to come home. You're going to come back to the land of Israel. As a nation, you're going to be safe and secure. Side note, now, shift your mind for a moment to the Exodus, getting out of Egypt. And what is the hope and what is the expected goal of getting out of Egypt? To get to where? Not Milwaukee. Where we're going to get to Israel. We're going to be safe and free and secure and intact and established. Understand? That's the mindset. So I think you can understand why there is a symbolic poetic reason to read this section from Ezekiel. I'm going to take you from wherever you are dispersed, and you're going back to your own land. You're going to be safe and strong and intact and established. Verse 25, I will sprinkle pure water upon you, and you shall be pure. I will purify you from all your impurities and from all your fetishes, which means that you may have absorbed certain foreign traditions while living scattered about as a result of the conquest by Babylonia. But when you come back to Israel, you're going to be renewed. You're going to be Jewish. And I will, verse 26, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit into you. I will remove the heart of stone from your body and give you a heart of flesh. Isn't that beautiful? So for a community that has been put down, to be reassured that it's going to have a whole new spiritual life as individuals and as a community is the message of Ezekiel as he's talking to his people. And I think that's why these are 2 or 3 reasons that are woven together, you might say, that we read this Haftorah now just 3-ish weeks away from Pesach, as we're approaching the holiday of Passover. How do we see ourselves as Jews? Do we see ourselves as perhaps influenced by non-Jewish traditions and practices? Do we see ourselves as having a heart that is in need of improvement? How can we purify ourselves so that we are back into the Torah's idealized mindset of being a safe and fully and whole, W-H-O-L-E, an intact community in our land, in our home, as free people? It's not enough to be free as an out of a prison. You need to have something of the spiritual and internal and personal self. You need a sense of purity. Otherwise, there's no real reason to be free. My interpretation of Ezekiel this year. We offer a prayer of healing for the members of our community. And if you know of someone who's ill, please mention that person's name from your seat at this time. Misha Berkotena Avram, Yitzchak Yaakov Mitena Sorov Gerachav Alea, Hivrakapit Cholim Yaelev is a Kolil et Yudit Bat Fredel, Adam Lefcourt, Yinta Bat Gisha, Avram Yudah Ben Gisha, Chanasor Bet Peshalea, Ruth Bat Sari Menu, Robert Spiegel, Elalea Bat Aviva, Sarah Bat Chana, David Shlomo Ben Tovanacham, Navarunit Bat Aliza, Karnea Chaya Bat Sari Menu, Pat Cockrell, Yudah Ben Sari Menu, Jonathan Mathis, George Patinos, Chaya Esther Bat Nachama, Yaakov Avram Ben Chayachana, Douglas Halprin, Rivka Bat Chavshalivsha, Shmuel Shimon Ben Eliyahu, Yaakov Ben Leora, Billy Singleton, Linda Bat Mina, Laura Barron, Nomi Bat Elisheva, Amy Myers, Lana Whitlock, Tracy Albers, Amen. Almighty God, as they have blessed and protected our ancestors, bring forth healing, Bring forth love and support to all those whose names are mentioned today, all those whose names are in our hearts. Come close to those who are afflicted and ill, those who are weakened, and those who are alone. Favor them with your touch, your presence. Bring Raphael, the angel of healing, by their sides. Bring an angelic presence of hope and peace so they may not feel alone, that this will be a day, a week of moving forward into the future with health, with safety, with promise. And we all say, Amen. Larry, may I call you up to lift the Torah? Ricky, may I call you forward for Galila, please, for dressing the Torah? We rise.
I was thinking while you were talking about the people from the Holocaust that moved into Israel with that same hope.
Exactly right.
It was like,
V'zot ha'Torah, exactly. Asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 tziva lanu Moshe. Ricky, would you open the ark, please? Larry, can you just put it right in the Torah? Just lean against your chest. Turning in the Siddur in just a moment, on page 177, in the Siddur, page 177, the lower left corner, a prayer for our nation, and then in a moment a prayer for Israel on page 177. Go back to your seats. Go back to your seats. Go back to your seats. On page 177, the lower left corner in the margin. Fill us all with the gifts of love and courage, that we may create a world that reflects your glory. May we each respond to the charge of your prophet. For what does Adonai demand of you, but to act justly, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God? May the one who brings peace on high bring peace and prosperity to our world and keep us in safety. And let us say, Amen. The top of page 178 in a moment. Avinu Shabashamayim, Tzur Yisrael v'Goalo, Barech et Medinat Yisrael, Reshit Tzmichat Geulatenu. Avinu Shabashamayim, stronghold and redeemer of the people Israel, bless the state of Israel, the beginning of our redemption. Shield it with your love, spread over it the shelter of your peace. Guide its leaders and advisors with your light and your truth. Help them with your good counsel. Strengthen the hands of those who defend our holy land. Deliver them, crown their efforts with triumph. Bless the land with peace and its inhabitants with lasting joy. And let us say, Amen. The top of page 184. The last three lines. Eitz chayim hi lama chazikim ba v'tom cheha meushar Terocheha darchei noam bechol netivoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Please remain standing. The Oleinu on page 205. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol latet gedula leotzer breshit shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'goraleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu shehu noteh shamayim v'yosed haaretz Moshav Yekara Bashamayim Mimal Ushkinatu Zo Begave Meromim Hu Eloheinu Enod Emet Makenu Efezulatom Kakatu bitorato Piadatayom Vashevota Elevavecha Ki Adonai Hua Elohim Bashamayim Mimal Vial Haaretz Mitachat Enod Kakatu b'Torah techa Adonai yimloch leolam v'ed v'nemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yihyeh Adonai echad Ushemo Echad. In a moment, the Mourner's Kaddish on page 207. Page 207, the Mourner's Kaddish. On this Shabbat, we remember with great love Rebecca Ribskirwich, Rose Abrams-Lubell, Bob Topper, Eli Schneiderman, Esther Loeb, Helen Williams, Herbert Moore, Miriam Mitzenmacher, Dr. Norman Lichtenfeld, Sarah Einstein, Ben Hershkovitz, Herbert Zuckerman, Kenneth Siegel, Marvin Zivitz, Morris Meyer, Morris Plotka, Solomon Sadowski, Annie Reed Charnetsky, Harry Duberman, Sam Perloff, Joseph Feinstein, Rose Powell, Leah Berger, Marilyn Lubell, Max Wilson, Rebecca Perloff, Sidney Letterman, Annie Rips, Chenya Friedberger, Miriam Jett, Elizabeth Cohen, Esther Robinson, Rose B. Powell, Eva Dunitz, remembering Michael Miller, Frida Maisel, Wendy Fastman. Are there any other names to mention today? Any other names today? Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabo. Amen. Be'olma divra chirute v'yamlich malchute. B'chaye chon uvyome chon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imeru. Amen. Yehi shemei rabo mivarach La'olam ololmei olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei tekudesha barich hu la'ela min kol birchota v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata Da'amiran ba'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. We Jews hear the term ve'imru amen a lot. It's a script. And when I say ve'imru amen, then you're supposed to say amen. Ve'imru is that I'm telling you, say amen. And in the Kaddish, we say it 4 times. Politely, I'm telling you, you need to say amen because you're hearing somebody else say a prayer. And so those who are standing up for Kaddish have their special words as mourners and as grievers. And we're supposed to let them speak and hear their words. And after they've finished a section of their prayer, then we say, Amen. We're paying attention to you. That's what V'imru Amen means. That we're paying attention to you to let you talk. And when you pause, we respond, we're paying attention to you. Number 1, it's in the context of the synagogue, which means it's holy. But number 2, outside of saying a prayer, it's something else. And the message is, listen to people who are grieving and let them talk. And after they've finished talking, when they're finished, then you and I can start talking. But first, let somebody talk. And some people might speak a whole long soliloquy after having lost a loved one. Some people might say, I'm really sad and lonely and angry. Let our people talk and listen. That's the purpose of the Kaddish. We'll conclude in just a moment with the Adon Olam on page 211. Reminder, Zoom Havdalah tonight is on at 7. And I think that's it for right now. Anything else going on? I think that's it for right now. Page 211. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li'et nasa v'chevtzo kol azai melech shemo nikra v'yacharei kichlot hakol lovado yimlok nora v'hu haya v'hu hoveh v'hu yiyeh b'tif ara v'hu echad v'yein ein sheni lahamshil lo lahachbira b'li reshit b'li tachlit v'lo ha'oz v'ha'misra v'hu eli v'chai go'ali v'tzur chavli b'yet sarah v'hu nisi umanos li menat kosi b'yom ekra b'yado avkid ruchi b'yet ishan v'yaira v'im ruchi geviyati Adonai li v'lo iram. Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom. To those joining in at home, we hope you come back at some point in the near future. We miss you. May God bless you. You're an important part of our community, but we hope to see you soon. Lihitraot. Shalom.